if you want to save sex till marriage, or you generally want to abstain from sex till you are married, why? My first question is why? Now, the reason is because your why is where your strength will come from.
Imagine that a friend of yours gives you a bottle of Coke to keep for them. Your friend plans to collect it the next day and you accept and keep it in your fridge. After a while, you get really thirsty and you start thinking about the Coke in your fridge. You tell yourself, let me just take a little sip of the Coke. You would hardly notice the difference. So you open up the bottle and take a sip. Minutes later, you can't stop thinking about the Coke. So you take another sip. After all, you won't notice the difference, right? 2 sips aren't significant, you tell yourself. What do you think will happen later on? The more sips you take, the more you crave the drink. And it's only later on that you will realize that you finished the bottle of Coke. And all of that started from an insignificant sip. Now, unless you replace the Coke, you will be in trouble with your friend. So this example illustrates the common mistake dating couples make before marriage.
So most people think, oh, fornication is okay, it's just not natural. But then they frown at adultery. What they fail to realize is that both of them are practically, on the same wavelength.
Stealing or taking what isn't yours is always sweeter than what's yours. You may have started dating with the desire to save sex until marriage, but because of a little sip you took, you find yourselves unable to stop sleeping with each other. After all, the Bible says, stolen water is sweeter and food eaten in secret tastes better. Sleeping with someone who isn't your spouse is always sweeter, but the consequences could be much worse. It could lead to unwanted pregnancies, STDs, or even divorce in the case of adultery. It's always in your best interest to maintain sexual purity. So the question is, how can you save sex till marriage? Before we get into that, please do well to like this video and subscribe for more enriching content.
Your strongest sexual organ is your mind. If you're going to protect anything, start by protecting your mind. He said, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life.
First thing is to avoid sexual touch. We saw in the above example how a simple sip led to finishing a whole bottle of Coke. Our bodies were not wired to start and stop halfway. If you start touching each other sexually, you are getting aroused and your body's chemistry was meant to take it all the way to having sex. So the best thing is to avoid it altogether. A single kiss will end up in sex at some point. Imagine for a second that you decide to cook jollof rice today, which you plan to eat a year later. Does that really make sense? Is that something realistic? Will you be able to keep that jollof rice for a year? No, you won't. You cook food to eat immediately, right? So if you don't want to eat, you don't cook. In a similar manner, if you don't want to have sex, don't start doing anything that will arouse you sexually. Trust me, it won't end well.
You see, the self-control you build as a single person is what will keep you when you're married. If you want to avoid adultery, then start with dealing with fornication.
2. Set clear boundaries. To avoid putting yourselves in a situation where you'll be tempted, you must set clear boundaries. The Bible says in the Songs of Solomon 8 verse 4, Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. What that simply means is that we should avoid any sexual arousal before the right time, which is in marriage. And the way to avoid that is by setting boundaries. There are 2 main boundaries that you need to set. The first is to avoid meeting behind closed doors. Meeting in private puts you in a vulnerable state to fall into temptation.
If you're going to abstain from sex, then you have to put physical boundaries.
No matter how spirit-filled you are, your body will lead you into trouble. Avoid things like cuddling or watching movies in private. Even praying together behind closed doors is not advisable. Always meet your partner in public places where it's less likely for such to happen. And the second boundary is to avoid meeting during late hours. Our alertness generally drops at night, and a situation could arise where your partner can't leave. maybe because it's raining heavily or there is no transportation available. Now, you will let your partner spend the night at your place. That already is a disaster waiting to happen. So do yourself a favor and avoid late night visits.
So both of you should not always lock yourself in the room or lock yourself in the house. That will put you under pressure. Both of you should lie on the bed and cuddle. That will put you under pressure. You're setting yourself.
Thirdly, get accountability. This is another very important point. You can't have a pure relationship in private. You need people who can keep you on the right track. People you are accountable to about the health of your relationship. This is usually a mentor or a spiritual authority such as your pastor who has walked this path already. You need to realize that God is not moved by fornication. He already knows whatever sins you are committing in private and He has already forgiven you. What He commands us to do is to confess our faults to one another and pray for one another. In this case, to your mentor, for instance.
There's nothing God has said in His word that benefits God. Everything God has said in His word benefits us.
God doesn't need to hold you accountable. We humans, however, are not that forgiving and loving like God.
It's better to have someone both of you are accountable to that will check on both of you. It's important.
When your sin is private, you don't usually feel shame. Even married people hide before they have sex. And that is why accountability with men is very efficient. Just knowing that your pastor will ask you about sexual purity will motivate you to do the right thing to avoid the shame. So let your pastor or spiritual authority know about your relationship and be honest to them about your challenges. Only then can they really help you. Those are the key strategies for maintaining sexual purity. What do you think? Do you know of any other tips on how to remain abstinent to marriage? Please do share with us in the comments. And if you are already sexually active and you have trouble stopping, we are here to help you out. Just sign up for a free coaching session with us by clicking the link in the description. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more enriching content. Please do also share this with your contacts. A lot of youths need to learn about these things. Sexual purity is for your benefit. Thank you very much for watching and see you in the next one.